Welcome back to Pink Slip Pavilion. If this is your first time here, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss a layoff story. Every Wednesday, we are bringing you a Pink Slip to Power Move story. And this week, we have Steve Jaffe and his story from dismissal to discovery.
This pink slips the start, not the end.
Welcome to Pink Slip Pavilion, Steve. We're so excited to have you here in the pavilion with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. And we have to start with the most important question. Have you ever gotten a pink slip?
I have. Yeah, I've actually gotten four of them over the course of my career.
Or
So, I got four. The first time I was laid off was spring of 2001, and the last time I was laid off was summer of 2023. And I I wrote a book about the experience. The book is called The Layoff Journey from Dismissal to Discovery, Navigating the Stages of Grief After Job Loss. And the book is about that journey because my first layoff really, really impacted me in a dramatically difficult, like I was wounded. It hurt. Didn't see it coming. I had bought into the myth of meritocracy. That's like, if you work hard enough and you're smart enough, you'll be rewarded. And the company was doing well. The campaign I was working on, I was working advertising and marketing. Client was happy. Agency was happy, but the client was going bankrupt. It was part of the first dot-com bubble that was bursting, and the agency had to have layoffs. So, as being a core person on the account, they had to let the team go. But my mind couldn't get around that. My mind thought like I had done something wrong. And I carried a lot of like shame and embarrassment and like, what could I have done differently? Um, Fast forward summer 2023, fourth layoff, it like rolls off me like water off a duck's back. And I do some introspection and I'm like, well, what changed here? Why was my first layoff so difficult? And this one doesn't affect me in any way. And I realized that I had learned how to think about it, I think, in the right context and to not give it any more oxygen than it needed. All of those difficult learnings about like, what does my layoff say about me? What is my identity without my job? Um, I didn't carry that any longer. And I thought, gosh, I really wanted to convey this knowledge and experience with other people that I was laid off with. I was laid off with about 20% of my company in 2023. And it was then that I realized, gosh, if I turn this into a book, I could help a lot more than just the people I was laid off with. I could help all of the hundreds of thousands and maybe millions of people that are getting laid off all the time. And that became, one of my pivots in my career from marketing and advertising into now being an author and promoting this book.
it's actually part of the reason I reached out. That's how I found Steve. So for those listening, I have not read the book yet. I will be reading the book, but that's part of the reason that we connected. And I know that this conversation is going to help a lot of people. But like you said, thousands, millions. I mean, we're seeing more and more and more layoffs and having the knowledge to go, okay, what is my relationship to a layoff? What is my self-identity? Those types of things. Those are the skills most of us don't have when we go into our
Mhm,
first layoff. So
mhm,
I want to take you back to the very first layoff, and I know you have four to reference, so I'm going to let you reference whatever ones you want to with these
mhm,
questions. But I want to go back to the mindset in the moment, and
mhm.
obviously it was different each time. So maybe that first one, but what was your mindset when you were receiving that pink slip?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like a whole body experience. So let me kind of give you mind, body, spirit. You're sitting there at the time, it was done in person. So I had layoffs done in person, and I've had layoffs done over Zoom. But in person or Zoom, I have a very visceral reaction. Like my heart starts palpitating, I get really dry mouth, I get really hot. Things kind of go fuzzy. So things that are said during the meeting, like my brain is still switched on with like, so we're letting you go. And like whatever gets said after that just goes in one ear and out the other because I'm like really focused on, oh my God, like what does this mean? And I go into that kind of state of shock. Um, So that's kind of like physically, emotionally, you immediately start thinking, oh my God, like, maybe I had a really great performance review. Maybe my boss or my client was telling me they really love working with me. Maybe I have a project that's due in like a week or two. And I'm thinking, oh my God, wait a minute, I was really invested in this project. How is it going to get done? Who's going to do it? All of these like things that start running through your head. Um, what am I going to tell my wife? What am I going to tell my spouse, partner, my loved one, my significant other, my family, my kids? What am I going to go home and tell my kids? Oh, I lost my job today. Like all of this stuff is running through your mind. And I think spiritually, there's this idea of our identity being tied up with our job. We get really wrapped up in what our business card says about us. Our
Mhm.
title and the company that we work for becomes shorthand for who we are. Like you meet somebody at a party, at an event, and they say, "What do you do?" And that becomes the shorthand for who are you? Tell me who you are, right? Because I'm going to make some judgment about you based on what you do, right? And obviously that's misplaced, but in the society that we live in, it's become kind of a shorthand. Um, what do I tell people without that business card? Who am I? So those are all of the things that in the moment you're faced with, and as time goes on, you try and deal with, and hopefully you're able to deal with it in a healthy way, and find healthy coping skills and coping mechanisms, and you're able to kind of work through this mind, body, spirit adjustment from your job through the process of finding a new job. And I think that's the big difference for me is that period for my first job, my first layoff, that took me like a couple of years. My last one, it took me maybe a couple of weeks. And that's what I hope people take away from the book is like, if you read the book and you follow what's in it, it may shorten that length of time that you're in grief and you're in recovery. And one of the benefits of not just recovering quicker, it positions you better for your job interviews, in how you show up. So it can result in you maybe finding a job sooner or quicker when the hiring manager says, "Why should we hire you for this job?" You're really prepared to answer that question when you go through the stages of grief, like recovery and resilience and acceptance and things. Um, so that's kind of in a nutshell my journey and what I hope people take away from the book.
I think that's a really important call out of how you show up in the job interview. And when you're going through a layoff and you're looking for your next step, whether that is a job or becoming an entrepreneur or whatever route you want to take, I don't believe there's one right way to grow through a layoff. It's just that you grow. But I think it's an important call out to say that when often what I see with people who have been laid off is their confidence is down. And I experienced this too. I mean, you feel beat up. You feel like, was it me? What did I do? And we all kind of fall victim to that at times. And that tends to show up in how we show up in our job interviews and how we show up in our day-to-day life. And so I think the quickest way we can get back to ourselves of I am worthy, I am, deserving of this role or deserving of the life that I want, whatever it is, however we can get back to ourselves, I think helps us move forward. So I love that you call that out in your book. And with that, I kind of want to go into how your mindset evolved. So you kind of alluded to it, but from your first layoff to today, what are some of those coping mechanisms that helped you get to the place that you're in today and the mindset that you're in today? Because you're very much in a different place than you were when you got your first layoff.
Yeah,
And I know that
yeah,
people can take those skills with them from this conversation.
yeah. I think one of the first things I learned is to not attach any like additional meaning to the event. The company is going through hard times. They're trying to balance their books, and the quickest way to generate revenue in a downturn is by removing headcount. It's quicker than generating more sales on the pipeline and all of that. So the layoff experience is one driven by math, not merit. So leave the shame and embarrassment at the door. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. In 2019, there was a statistic that said 40% of all Americans have been laid off at least once. Now, that was 2019. Imagine how much higher that percentage is now. But not everybody talks about their layoff experience because there's the stigma attached to it. So if people were to let that shame and embarrassment go, what they find is this large community of people that they can turn to and rely on for support and like communication and learning and growth, right? Um, but the other thing is, I think I learned to leave or I learned to understand that myth of meritocracy, where somehow hard work is going to insulate you. Like I've seen employee of the month, employee of the year get laid off. You know, in January they get named employee of the year, and in June they get laid off.
Yeah.
And like how can you justify that as 1 month they're being the ideal employee and 6 months being let go? You can't unless you understand this equation that performance doesn't insulate you. So absolutely show up and work hard and be a good, reliable employee, but don't think that that's going to insulate you in some way. So, I learned to leave the shame and embarrassment behind. I learned that any amount of hard work isn't going to insulate me, that this is a budget exercise. And then I learned in the midst of the layoff, all of the coping skills to kind of rebalance mind, body, spirit so that not only do I move through the stages of grief in a healthy way, but in a way that positions me for success in that job hunt. So, like we were talking about, you get dealt this blow to your confidence and your self-esteem when you're laid off, right? But then now, in this state of being knocked down, you have to go send out hundreds of resumes, get hundreds of no's, get ghosted, get told you're the ideal candidate, taken to the last round, and then never hear back from them again. All
Mhm.
of these things that the job seeker faces, not to mention the financial hardship, the strain on your relationship, the strain on your health, mental health, physical health that results from a layoff. So you get dealt these like exponentially bad blows to everything in your life. And in order to maintain some level of like healthy coping skills, positive self-confidence, it's important to like really actively um, um, create like a healthy mind, body, spirit of showing up every day, doing what you can to like fill your tank with joy and people surrounding yourself with people around you that will support you and comfort you. There's a lot of little things that you can do that all add up, but it's a difficult period of life. And like you mentioned, nobody comes out of a layoff experience the same person that they were when they went into it. You will always be faced with some kind of change. And it's up to you to determine like how you're going to change, in what way. Will it be beneficial? Will you use this as an opportunity to reskill, upskill, find transferable skills, make a pivot? Will you double down on the career path that you're in? Now, I'm always reluctant to say that a layoff can have a silver lining because when you're out of work for 12 months and you're struggling to make rent or mortgage and you have kids, like it is a difficult period of time. Um, but it can create an opportunity for you to do some self-examination of your career path, what interests you, where your passions are, those sorts of things that you may not normally have time for when you're working, a 60-hour week and doing all the things that you do to, in your busy like day-to-day work life. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, it does for sure. And I think the silver lining piece is kind of the hindsight because That's part of the reason I'm having these conversations with people that have grown through their layoffs. For some people, it's a 5 year experience to get to the point where they can look back and go, had that not happened, all these great things wouldn't have happened. So it might not be a year, it might be five, it might be 10. You might still be walking through that journey if you've been laid off in the past and you're listening to this conversation. But it is that hindsight at some point. I do believe that we all grow through our challenges. How fast we grow through them, how we choose to grow through them, how we choose to meet them. That is us taking our power back and saying, okay, this is hard. Life is hard sometimes. I can't control that, but what can I control? And like you said, finding little moments of joy in your day, taking the time to sit back and go, what do I want next? Am I doubling down? Am I pivoting? There are a lot of moments in a layoff experience that are unique in the sense of I haven't had time in a decade of working to sit back and go, how is my health? Like, when's the last time I slept 8 hours a night? Like, we really commit so fully to our careers. And like you said, it's our identity in a lot of cases, it's how we introduce ourselves. But I also want to highlight what you said about just the whole layoff experience and how challenging it is. Because I know there's someone that's going to be listening to this that might be literally sitting in that challenge right now. And I want them to feel seen. I want them to know that we know what that feels like, but also that that is not forever. It is a moment in time and you can grow through it. And I love that your book is a resource for that. So, going from that, I want to jump into blessings next because I think that that's a great segue.
Mhm.
What would be missing in your life had you not experienced those four layoffs? What would not have been possible?
You know, I learned a tremendous amount of resilience and grit from getting knocked down, and forcing yourself back into the ring every day. I found a sense of like courage and hope. For me, every day you're sending resumes out, and that takes a lot of courage.
Hmm.
You're on your 100th, 200th resume, and you're thinking, why am I even doing this? What is the point? Is anything going to come of this? But hope is where you find that maybe this is the one. This is the one that's going to get my foot in the door, that's going to get me the interview, that's going to lead to the job. And without that courage and hope, it's hard to get out of bed every day. It's hard to go through the motions to do what you need to do to show up to then have the success down the road. So you have to believe in yourself. And that's where like you rebuild your own self-confidence like one brick at a time. And you have to sometimes just be really deliberate about it. And in that experience, I learned I can do hard things. I went through a period where I was out of work for 18 months after that first layoff. And I learned like, okay, you know what? I was pretty much at the bottom of everything. And I was able to get back in the game and go on and have a successful career. And, it was a moment that lasted 18 months and they were really
Long
difficult,
moment.
right? But that's something that now I know, like, okay, life's going to throw you curveballs. I know I can deal with what life throws at me because I've been through some stuff and I've developed, some resiliency and some grit and some tenacity and all of those things that I didn't have the first time. That was one of the reasons why it was so hard for me because I was like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on? I was really young and it was pretty young in my career. And I hadn't really been faced with that, the difficult things that life can throw at you. So, as time progressed, um, those skills and those beliefs really helped me and became kind of the building block for how I could recover and regain footing and use it as a step through the event and not see it as a roadblock, but see it as a detour.
Absolutely. And the first time you do anything, it's always more challenging than the second, third, fourth, right? So
Right.
I love that that can actually be a great measuring stick for you if you're going through multiple layoffs, right? To build back your confidence in a way. Okay, this is my second layoff. Am I handling it better than the first? Am I handling it
Right.
now we're building a resiliency and we can feel proud of, okay, we've grown. Like this is still hard and it might be 18 months of hard. Like we don't know how long sometimes our challenge seasons are, but I love that you can grow through and you can look back and go look at the resiliency and look at the skills that I've built through these challenging seasons that I couldn't control. So
Mhm.
if you could go back and you could talk to yourself at any one of those layoffs and you could use the wisdom you have now to talk to that version of you, what would you want him to know?
That he didn't do anything wrong, that he was maybe in the wrong place at the wrong time because his industry was contracting. Maybe there's a pandemic, maybe there's a dot-com bubble that's bursting, maybe there's a global recession. All these things that the market does to business that business has to react to. Um, I would not carry that shame and embarrassment. I would recognize that I showed up and I did the best work that I could do while I could do it. And um, whatever the job was that was taken away, I was in no control of. So I would focus on what I can control, and that's my reaction in response to the event, and how I choose to use it as whatever the launch pad for the next thing would be. Um, but I would not give it any more oxygen than that. And I would there's an analogy that I really like, which is, in a car, you have the rear view mirror. And the rear view mirror is much smaller in proportion than the windshield. And that's kind of the ratio that I would tell people to look backward on the event. Look backward for a minute, learn what you can from it, but spend your energy looking forward and not wondering what happened and why me, and use it as an opportunity to say what's next.
Oh, I love that analogy. I think some of us at times get stuck with the windshield in the back and we're trying to drive with the rear view and that doesn't work. Um, I love that. So closing this out, if there's somebody that's listening to this conversation and they're currently walking through a layoff, maybe they went through one in the past and they're still growing through it, or possibly they're fearful that one is coming because we're living in a very interesting time.
Mhm.
What would you want them to hear or leave this conversation with?
um, that it's perfectly normal in this economy, in this business climate, to get laid off. And the best employees have all been laid off. There's
Yeah.
nobody who's ever gone through their career. Like I mentioned, that statistic was 40% in 2019. It's surely higher than that.
Yeah.
Um, and you aren't alone, or you won't be alone. The great thing now is that there are opportunities for support that really didn't exist in 2001 when I got my first layoff. There was no internet, there were no like chat groups, and like there's a Discord group for people that have been laid off, and a Substack, and places on LinkedIn, and books and podcasts.
Yeah.
All of these things that you can use to develop community and develop support and resources and network, that will really help in your recovery journey. And I would invite everybody to use them and take advantage of them. And that was one of the impetuses for my book, was that I wish I had something like this when I was laid off the first time. So it's a resource for folks that are going through it. From somebody who's got the 10,000 hours of becoming an expert. You can learn from my personal experience.
I love that because I shared with you before we started filming that that's how this podcast came about too. I needed this when I walked through my layoff, and I think that's such a beautiful thing that tends to happen with people that have gone through an experience and they go, how do I help the people that I know are going to walk this walk? Because I know how hard it is, and I just want to give them something. So I love that you wrote a book to support people that are walking through this. And if you're listening to this and you are walking through a challenge, please reach out for resources. Like you said, there's so many different resources now. We talk about these things. We're removing the shame. We're reframing the layoff experience. So thank you so much, Steve, for joining
Yeah,
me, sharing your
yeah.
story and your
Thank you.
resources. And I hope that you'll join us in the pavilion again sometime soon.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to anytime. Thank you for having me.
Another great story, and I hope that you're feeling empowered knowing that no matter what comes your way, if you have one layoff or even four, you can grow through the experience and come out the other side better off for it. This is just the proof. These stories are meant to show you what's possible. These stories are meant to inspire you. These stories are meant to connect with you where you're at. We recognize that layoffs are very challenging, but we also don't want you to lose your power in it. Take your power back. Take advantage of resources. They are out there, they're ready for you, and make connections. If you want to connect with Steve, his contact information will be in the description of this episode. Please make sure you build your community throughout this season because this is just the beginning of your next chapter. It is not the end. It is a beautiful bow on what was so that you can unwrap what is yet to be. We'll be back next Wednesday and every Wednesday because I am committed to making sure that you know your pink slip is just a power move waiting to happen. I'll see you next Wednesday.
This pink slip